Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Chicago Wilderness Cafe, Mapping the Green Vision, Chicago Wilderness Hub and Support for Strategic Conservation. My name is Laura Riley. I'm the coordinator of Chicago Wilderness, and we're going to give it a few minutes while folks join us. We're really pleased to have you here today. While folks are joining us, I want to let you know that this cafe will be recorded. The link will be shared on our website, and I will send it out to those who registered for today's cafe, along with a PDF of the slides. In the meantime, please keep yourself muted until we get through the major presentation. And if there's opportunity for question and answer, you can put any of your comments, questions in the chat, and we will monitor those. And you're also welcome to leave your camera on or off as you prefer. Okay.
Thanks, Laura.
Yes.
Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Bowman. I'm the Chicago Region Program Director in the Keller Science Action Center at the Field Museum. And I'm joined today by a group who will be presenting today's cafe. As you can see here, there are a number of terms in the title that if you're new to this whole conversation, that you might need a little background for. Words like green vision, words like Chicago Wilderness and Hub, and what do we mean by strategic conservation? So we're going to be working today to pull together some of those threads and show you how the development of this mapping hub is being used to support one of the main threads of strategic conservation in the region, and that is prioritizing habitat improvements along rights of way. So next, please. So some of the goals are to introduce you to the vision, to understand the importance of rights of way, to see how CW, as Chicago Wilderness Hub, is relating and supporting those goals, and to then introduce you to the growing Chicago Habitat Initiative, which is relating to the rights of way conversation. So I'll just say a couple of more things, then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, landscape architect Ted Hafner, who will tell us a little bit more about Chicago Wilderness and the history of strategic conservation and where this piece fits in the region. There are some things happening right now that I will come back on to talk about related to something called the 30 by 30 initiative. Then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague at the Field Museum, Mark Johnston, who is going to take us through a demonstration of where the mapping hub is these days. This is an online platform that supports the Chicago Wilderness Strategic Vision. Then we'll introduce with Tega Obire from UIC's Sustainable Landscapes Program and the Energy Resource Center. Tega will walk us through what's happening with the Growing Chicago Initiative, and then we'll throw it open to general discussion and answer some of your questions. Next, please. So the green vision in general, what do we mean by this? Well, it's vibrant nature, improving environmental and human health, promoting quality of life, and benefiting our collective home today and for generations to come. The next one, Ted. And in this region, Chicago Wilderness is a network of partners, but it's also this place of 10 million people living on 8 million acres. And the vision is that vibrant nature is supporting everybody in our collective home. Chicago Wilderness moves that vision forward through a series of defined goals. There's 7 of them. They're listed on this chart. Don't worry about zeroing in on them too closely here. But one of them is facilitating green infrastructure, prioritizing green infrastructure, which relates to that rights of way initiative. But so we'll be looking into an instance of how the hub, which is at the center of all of these, sort of supports that vision and its strategic conservation work. And the hub is a way where data is pulled together, where the goal progress is tracked, and we hope it's a resource for everybody. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ted.
Thanks, Mark. With this slide, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into the workings of Chicago Wilderness. I'm wearing 2 hats today. Mark said one of them. It's the other hat is as the head of the climate committee. This is our climate committee setup. These are our goals. Sub-goal 1 deals with adaptation. Sub-goal 2, mitigation, justice, community, advocacy, and education. Those are the boxes on the bottom, and you can see the dots next to it correspond to all the dots on top. Those are our 7 goal teams. And the reason that I'm showing you this today so that you can see how the climate committee actually really relates to all 7 committees. But also you get a sense of, for later, the different land types that we are working with on the different communities or committees, excuse me. Ag is a new one. Green infrastructure, you can see. Land conservation, that's our bailiwick, you know, that's our bread and butter. Water is a new one. Climate action, and then increasing equitable access is also new. But you can see how all these different committees within CW start to look at different types of land differently, and that will become important a little bit later. So that's why I stress this slide. The next slide, I'm going to give a little bit of historical perspective. The image is actually from the 1909 Burnham Plan. Image, we all know or should know the Burnham Plan, as it our city quite mightily. The image on the right is our image. So you can see that we are building on an enduring history and legacy of design and design thinking and design moves in the region. To follow up that even further, we think of this as a city plan, but it's actually a regional plan, much like CW. You know, it creeps out into the western suburbs up north. We see ringlets of parks and boulevards, which we actually have. So there's a lot to see here that overlaps and really century and a half of planning and design. And that's really important, I think, for what we're going to be thinking, not just today, but in this entire series of architect. One of the things that I'm going to go over today, conceptual thinking with you. And within all these considerations, right? An example is this notion of complete streets. In design thinking as landscape architects today, we see a street and we think that it has only 1 or 2 functions, primarily car and vehicle mobility, but then second, passenger or pedestrian mobility, excuse me. In a complete street, however, we reimagine streets to try to accommodate multiple and programs. Some of those are traffic flow and comfort and shade and stormwater capture and things like that. So we're cramming a ton of scope and program into these spaces. And I'm going to argue that rights of way in general are no different. And from a climate perspective, we're going to have to jam more and more stuff into these things so that they don't perform single uses as much as they used to for all of us to solve these planet's problems. In similar fashion, we all speak the same language, right? We have corridors, we have our hubs where our transformers go, we have passages that we need either wildlife or power or cars or people to get from one place to another. That's the same language. So I think we have commonalities there that we can build upon. And then the picture up above this man, he's a noted landscape architect, Ian McHarg, and he basically came up with this notion of layering these programs on the left to figure out how to best site things with all the variables involved. This is sort of morphed into our modern day GIS package of tools. But again, you can see how rights of way might incorporate some of these spatial thinking in terms of getting everything we want into these corridors. You know, here's our highway map. We have to work with that. We have to work with the CW map. Here's an existing utility map showing a bunch of different utilities in the region. And then finally, this map above in the right-hand corner, I really like a lot because it comes from Nature Conservancy. And basically what it shows is the resilient land areas in our region. The brown areas, it's not that they're not fit for conservation, because they certainly are. What it really signifies is the conservation investment there will be much greater than in these green areas, say here in the Palos complex, or following the Illinois River corridor up here in Hackmatack, or in places elsewhere throughout the region, like the Indiana Dunes in Michigan and things like that. So there are possibilities here. We can work together and layer on and think critically concepts that I mentioned. Are these all the concepts? Absolutely not. But that's why we're here today, is to try to digest some of these, to digest some of these concepts and really tackle these problems of moving people and nature and integrating people and nature together. And with that, I think I am done, and I'm going to set this back to Mark. Mark, go ahead, please.
Thanks, Ted. That's great. And you alluded to the fact that this is the first in a series of workshops that and cafes that are going to, this lays some introductory groundwork for some deeper conversation around prioritizing green infrastructure, especially in rights-of-way corridors. So just to reiterate, the original green infrastructure vision, which is one of those sort of rings of stranded together corridors across the region, still is present in this expanded green vision, but it now covers all landscape types across the region. And the question is how to get maximum conservation value from all the land covers. Next, Ted. Now, this is unfolding, and I think it's really important to say this as a big framing element in the Chicago region these days, and in Illinois and in the United States, because founded as Chicago Wilderness, founded as the Chicago Region Biodiversity Council, the concerns about declining biodiversity have led for these global conversations around we need to try to protect X amount of land by a certain date. And the 30 by 30 initiative speaks about protecting 30% of land by the year 2030. That's now been taken up in various ways in various countries. And Ted, go to the next one. And in the United States, this takes the form of the America the Beautiful Project initiative. And there's an Illinois the Beautiful initiative going forward as well. But what this map shows us that for us in the state of Illinois, with 94% of the land covered by farms and by cities, to get to 30% land protected is way, it's impossible under those terms. Fortunately, America the Beautiful frames this as about restoring and conserving and thinking about all land covers. Next one, please. So that I'll give you a demonstration of why, how this can be so important. So if we say we have 8 million acres in the Chicago Wilderness region, if we were to try to protect 30% of it, to protect it formally, we'd need 2.4 million acres. And we currently have 575,000. So that means we'd need to go to like 1.8 million acres protected. But, and go to the next one, Ted. You'll see that in the state of Illinois, we've got about 4.8 million in Chicago wilderness area, of which 30% would be 1.4 million. To really protect only, you'd need 1 million acres of land. But if you go to the next one, we can see that if we push as hard as we can and just hit the next, tap it, yeah, you'll see that agricultural land, which forms such a big part of our region, and for which Chicago Wilderness coordinated a tour last week about what are excellent examples of regenerative agriculture. If we can get conservation compatible use under the terms of America the Beautiful and Illinois the Beautiful, perhaps we can be advancing towards those conservation goals that really do matter for everybody in the region. And then to be very specific, on built land, you can see that 1.5 million acres of about 1/3 of the land in the Chicago wilderness area in Illinois are built land. And what does that mean? It means residential backyards, of which we know there's so much work, community gardens, corporate campuses, green roofs. These are maximum conservation value on the land and rights of way. Now, how do we go about supporting that work to prioritize conservation and rights of way? And how do we actually have the conversation about that? I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Mark Johnston here, to talk about the hub that supports that prioritization process. And then we'll move to hear about how that process is actually going to unfold. So Mark?
Excellent, thanks, Mark. Yeah, so again, with this slide, we want to demonstrate both that there's 7 different key initiatives, key goals that we're focused in on. And as Mark pointed out, that prioritizing green infrastructure is really the one that's probably going to be resonate most with the, the folks on the call for rights of ways. But behind each one of these goals, first of all, there's a lot of overlap, right, between all of them, but behind each one, there is a working group. And so if you are interested in participating or being a part of any of this, we highly encourage you to seek us out. Laura Riley as well can help to plug you in, and even through resources of the hub, there's links to sort of show you how to get involved. So next slide, please. So just wanted to go over some of the purposes of the hub. This is kind of a short list, but organizing around the key conservation goals that we just talked about in the last slide, and then getting GIS into the hands of stakeholders. So there are interactive maps with GIS kind of layers added into them for each of these different key initiatives. And so it kind of gives folks the chance to do GIS who don't have the software and resources to do that. And it also allows people who are GIS users to download layers to work with them directly. We also are working towards tracking our regional progress. We've really only begin to do that for the most part with the first goal group, which is the managing healthy lands. But that's a goal that we have for across all the goal groups to really see our progress. And then there's landing pages, as I mentioned, for each of the different conservation goals that have interactive maps, map galleries, and resources. What I mean by resources is we really want to link out to our partners that have tools that are related to these different goal groups as well. So that's another way that you can reach out to us so that we can plug into those tools. And then, yeah, doing all of that, we're hoping this will be a one-stop shop for conservation work. So next slide. I think we're going to jump now into a quick demo. Let's see. All right, sharing my screen now. So this is CW Hub, and to get to CW Hub, you just need to go to, it's the same website as it is for Chicago Wilderness. Just add this hub to the beginning of it. So hub.chicagowilderness.org. And when you log into it and sign in, you'll see this same, or just going to the site, you'll see all these 7 key initiatives. And then I wanted to point out that you can join the site as well. So what joining means is you're actually creating a login. If folks already have a GIS login, you can use that, or you can create a new one for free. So when you first come here, for most folks, you're going to see something that looks more like this page. And so you can use existing credentials of like Facebook or Google, or you can just use an email account. So if you click here where it says no account, you click on that, it'll give you the option to just use an email address with your credentials. I'm going to go back because I do have an account already. So I'm going to click sign in. And you'll notice a change. Let's see, once it's, did I hit cancel? Let me try that again. Okay, sign in. There we go. I don't know why it does that. So if you click sign in, it's going to give you that you're now joined into the account. I'm a follower of this group, which gives me the ability to do things like, you see this new section below here just popped up now that I'm logged in. So now I can add to the repository. It also does things like, we have some mobile applications that you can use. And so when you have a login like that, you can use Survey 123. Some folks might be familiar with that. And some additional applications like Quick Collect. And I'll talk about that again in just a minute here. But clicking on this upload button, I just wanted to show this quickly because one of the key functions of CW Hub is that it is a repository for GIS data. We want it to have all of the key information and data layers that we need. So if you want to upload your own data set, you can just fill out this information here. And this is so that we can get in touch with you if we have any questions. And it also records sort of metadata related to what you're uploading. So we know how to update it in the future. We know where it came from, that kind of information. And I'm just gonna go through this quickly, but there's different data types that you can upload. So you can upload it as a geodatabase, as a shapefile, raster data. You can even just upload PDFs, like of a report. So it's non-spatial, but it's like in the repository for people to download if it's an important report. And then lastly, I want to point out this one. So for GIS folks, we'll recognize REST endpoints, and for non-GIS folks to just update you. If you are putting all your data into one database system, you can share that data out through a REST endpoint to another database system. So that's a really cool way of, like, if you've got a robust system already, you're collecting your own field data, you can just share it with us. And it's a live link. So you're not having to, we don't have to keep updating it over and over. We just got a live collection or connection to your database. So that's very powerful. You can decide whether you want it to be downloadable or not, which is important for if you want to control the version or not, to only allow people to use it online versus downloading it and using it. And there's other things like whether it's sensitive, so it's only a subset of people that will have access to it. Whether it's used for tracking. So there are things that for certain goal groups can be used as indicators to say that we're making progress towards that goal. So checking off that indicator box lets us know that we can use it for that purpose. And then I'll just point out here too that as you upload data, you can check off which goal it pertains to. So you see the goals 1 through 6 are showing up here. And by clicking those off, that's saying I'm associating this data with that goal group. And when you go to the interactive map, it'll now show up there as an option to download that data layer. Now, this doesn't immediately go into the database. Someone needs to actually look at it and vet it. So we call those our data shepherds. So they look at it, they make it sure it's going to visualize well in the maps. But that's what I wanted to show you about the repository side of things. Now I'm going to jump over here to the green infrastructure tab. So this is the landing page for green infrastructure, since that pertains most well to the folks on the call. And so you see here's the interactive map. You can look at it in full screen. That's what this first button does here. There's a help document that I'll click on. it just tells you what all the different tools are inside of the interactive map. So that can be a helpful reference. And then another link to that, to that data repository. I'm going to go to full screen real quick here. And we'll make this real fast because we don't have a lot of time. And I do encourage everyone to come and explore, poke around, try things. You're not going to break anything. So test it out and see what you can do. Excuse me. So first off, this interactive map has a ton of GIS layers on it. It's really busy, right? And so we've been calling, these are kind of like kitchen sinks in a way, right? And we're going to come out with a set of interactive maps that are more thematic so that we don't have so many data layers all in one map. But we do want this option so that people can come in here and play with the data. By the way, you can turn layers off, which is really important on this map. So I'm going to come in and turn off some of these layers and just show you, we've got all the rights of way sort of center lines showing up on this. I guess I'll leave protected lands turned on. And then you can kind of zoom into the map. You can change the base map to like an ortho photo. That's what this top left button does here with the blocks. But you can see, you know, you can have really detailed data layers in here and sort of see the relationship between the different GIS layers. Quickly, because we don't have a lot of time, I want to show you there's a swipe feature where you can peel back one GIS layer and you can select which one you do that with. Sorry, I need to drink some water. There's also this add data layer. And so this is what's pulling from our repository. So if you've uploaded a data layer or you want to pull something that in addition to what's on this map into this, you can go in here and type in a term. Let's see, what do we have for the rights of way? So we already have these added, but there's another data layer like this that we can add in that's going to show data layers, rights of ways that are touching protected lands, for example. And we'll show that. We'll show that in an example when I come back to the slides. All right, so I got to keep moving along here for time. Let me switch back to quickly. I'm going to go to healthy lands. Oh, great. The kids have made the smoke alarm go off. Healthy lands were a little bit further with this goal group. You can see there's a couple of QR codes. And, you know, if you want to try this stuff out after you create that login, you can hold it up and use your phone to pull open those interactive field applications. But these allow you to do things like tell us where there are invasive species around Chicago, or where you've done restoration work, like remove buckthorn. And those kinds of data layers are going to help us with telling us where we're managing healthy lands across the region. So here's this interactive map, and I'm going to click on this other one that has goal tracking. We don't have this yet for goal 3, but we certainly want to. And so with this interactive map, that's still loading. This one allows you to input entire data sets that are in the repository, such as like where are all the areas that have been burned across the region. And that can then quickly tell us, you know, which areas we think have been managed based on areas that have been burned. There's also like where we've seen sensitive species from eBird. So all kinds of data layers can be added in here for that tracking purposes. And then what you're seeing here is just a summarized version of the data. This is at the municipal sort of scale with census tracts. And then this one is showing watersheds, but you can zoom in to get kind of that parcel level information of how we're doing with managing lands. Information about what those different indicators is located here on this pullout on the side. I know this is a quick whirlwind, but I encourage you to come and explore the CW Hub and learn kind of what's here on your own. We're going to switch back to slides now. I think we're a little bit behind schedule, but doing pretty good. Ted, are you going to share the slides again, or you want me to do that? Okay, and this is just to summarize again that users can upload data to the repository, and that goes into both the interactive maps and into the data catalog. You can also do things like PDF reports. And we can move on to the next slide, but just wanted to show as a summary. And then this as well, this is about the tracking system. So once data is loaded into the repository, a subset of those can be used as indicators, and those can get loaded into our tracking system that tells us how we're doing across the region. This one is for healthy lands, but we want to do this for all the different goal groups. And then there we can have things like field applications that you see on the right there that can also help to actually capture the data that's used for that tracking as well. So next slide. So our next steps will be to update the goal landing pages with a clear vision. So we really want this to be more accessible to users in general. So we'll be updating the goal pages. We're going to be creating those tracking systems for all the different goal groups. We're going to deploy more field applications that are, again, for tracking that data across the goal groups, and then thematic maps instead of just the kitchen sink maps. Next slide. So what I just wanted to show this real quick because so some of the data that's in the repository can be pulled out and you can work with it like we've done here. This is showing the different types of rights-of-ways. These are just center lines for these different types of rights-of-ways across the CW region. We'll move on to the next slide. And then this shows you all of those same rights-of-way layers sort of stacked on top of each other. But what's kind of cool about this is, yeah, after you, so we've now we're showing just, sorry, Ted, can you go back? Just stop there. Yep. One more forward, right there. Great. So this is showing all the rights of ways that are touching protected land areas that are in green. And then if you go one more click, this is showing those that are actually passing through or directly adjacent to those protected lands. And then one more click. And this is showing you without those protected lands behind it, so you can see those rights of way areas. And this totals up to 1,800 linear miles, which is about 23,000 acres back of the envelope estimate. Again, like what we don't have is a good sense of where all that habitat is across the whole region. We need folks in the rights of way industry to actually upload that data to the rights of way as habitat database system, which Iris's team is heading up. And if you add it into that system, what's great news is it'll go right into CW Hub as well. I'm going to turn it over to the UIC folks. Tega is going to talk next about kind of how this initiative will roll out.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. Hello, everyone. I'm Tega Obire, a graduate intern with the Rights of Way as Habitat Working Group at the University of Illinois, Chicago, and I'll be providing an overview of the Growing Chicago Habitat Initiative. So Growing Chicago is the direct outcome of the recommendations of our 2021 strategic roadmap exercise, which focused on expanding pollinator habitat on utility and transportation rights of way across the Chicago region. The study identified barriers and opportunities to creating and conserving pollinator habitat on energy and transportation rights of way. This initiative, funded by the Donnelly Foundation, is a working group that serves as a convening point for energy and transportation orgs, public and private landowners, and conservation partners throughout the region to share information, build capacity, collaborate, and track and showcase successes with habitat projects. Next slide, please. There are 3 action words which comprehensively capture what Growing Chicago aims to achieve: establish, build, and create. Part of our goal is to, 1, establish a network that serves as a connection point between road managers, partner orgs, and related initiatives across the Chicago region to share updates on projects, challenges, and lessons, and support each other's work. We've also built a shared platform we hope to grow so organizations tell their stories and build broader recognition and get support from internal and external stakeholders. A primary focus of this platform is to change the narrative around road use by increasing public awareness of these types of projects, creating collaborative projects, storytelling opportunities, and building local and national recognition. And thirdly, to create a prioritization strategy building on existing mapping and prioritization efforts by Chicago Wilderness, the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group, Friends of the Chicago River, and others to identify priority areas for rural habitat projects in the region. This is particularly crucial because it serves as a means to support habitat creation and maintenance through logistical planning, landowner and public buy-in, long-term care, and invasive species management. Next slide, please. We just launched earlier this year, and currently our group is made up of 15 conservation groups, 10 public landowners, 7 roadway organizations, 4 private landowners, 3 utility companies, and 2 contractors. And we primarily communicate and send updates through our resources hub, House and Trello, which includes an initiatives tracker, a discussion board hosted by Slack, and other relevant tools to engage our working group members to actively collaborate together on habitat conservation and support projects. Next slide, please. As mentioned earlier, Growing Chicago is the realization of a strategic road mapping process by the Rights of Ways Habitat Working Group. As part of this road mapping exercise, a survey was sent out to the working group participants to collate general information on their progress in creating and maintaining pollinator habitats. One of the aspects we specifically focused on was the limitations to creating these habitats. And based on survey responses, we gathered that lack of support, lack of knowledgeable staff and contractors, concerns over long-term management, safety worries, and many others were among some of the barriers preventing successful habitat establishment and management. For us, this highlighted the need for collaborative efforts to strategically grow Chicago because there is significant interest, though not acted upon because of a fragmented state of habitat creation and conservation projects. So this prioritization strategy really will provide a framework for such conservation efforts by identifying priority areas for rural habitat conservation projects, and also more importantly, support the creation and maintenance process. Next slide, please. As we've established the need for a prioritization strategy, we've proceeded to develop a framework for how we hope to achieve this. Firstly, we will review the existing mapping data to highlight the layers of natural areas, then identify what opportunities for new habitat conservation projects exist, and conclude by devising means to get in stakeholder and public interest in these projects. To prepare for this, we've developed some preliminary guiding questions, which we have identified as crucial to the strategy development process. So thinking about what do we have, what is existing, what do we need, who do we need to engage, and who has the resources to support this prioritization goal. With these established and potentially having some form of responses to these questions, the next step would be to ask even more questions, but questions targeting what an ideal prioritization strategy would look like and the best ways to go about this. So I know this might seem like a lot of information being given to you in a short time frame, but if you have any questions about Growing Chicago or getting involved, please feel free to reach out to us, and I'll pass it back to Matt Bauman for our discussion session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Tega. And I think you've really done an amazing job of showing us how building on resources like you've seen in the hub, we can use those to start to frame up questions of what are we going to actually do. So we're very much interested in folks putting into the chat your questions. We've got a few for you and a few that we will discuss amongst ourselves. I'm going to add in here Iris Caldwell and Carolyn Hernandez, Tega's colleagues at UIC. And I would also note that we're really eager for any GIS professionals to join in these conversations, both about the hub itself, and we've got a group that works, meets every other week that kind of backs up Mark, and who's done amazing work with a couple of colleagues here at the Field Museum, but there's a network of professionals we're eager to expand, and those who are specialists in the world of habitat improvement, and especially in working in rights of way. So I'm really interested in this first question. Anything that most interested or surprised you from today?
I can say something quickly. I think it's great that it's advancing the way it is. I think that's really, really fun to see. And it seems like there are others being able to keep uploading their data so that you always have the most updated information on, say, healthy habitats or who's doing what project where in the rights of way. So I thought that was great. Congratulations to all.
Thank you, Debbie. I'll say something that surprised me. I had no idea till Mark did the big reveal here. You may not have seen this, that back of the envelope calculation of perhaps as many as 25,000 acres in rights of way themselves as a conservable land. Pretty cool to see that.
Yeah, those are the little chunks of rights of way that are directly adjacent to those protected areas. So some of those may already be, you know, habitat areas, but again, we got to get that into the database so we can see where they are. You know, the rights of way is habitat database system, and then that can play with CW Hub really well.
And I think that's an important point, Mark. So it's not even all of the rights of way across the region, but we could even consider some of those lower hanging fruit acres that are adjacent or, you know, very proximate to protected lands. And again, I think those of us who have been working with energy and transportation organizations or thinking about rights of way, I think that's the value that we see is these connectors that really are touching all sorts of landscape types. And I think that's the opportunity that these energy and transportation lands can provide.
Yeah, notice that Lisa's point in the chat about the connectivity being really crucial, not only for circulation or transportation or the movement of raw materials, but also important for habitat connectivity, which seems like a next stage map to be making. But then potentially are, you know, also vectors for invasives. So they can work on the plus side and on the minus side. So it's really important to have really good data there. I would note Kristen Voorhees' hand up though. And Kristen, why don't you go ahead? Hi.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me? Sometimes the headphones work or don't work. Great. This is really great. I wanted to echo Debbie's comments. Congratulations for pulling this together. I've been able to kind of see how much, you know, the Rights of Habitat as Rights Way as Habitat Working Group has come along, and this is an exciting expansion to the actual hub to use those tools. And so I'm wondering, like what is most interested in me was seeing that hub in action, and thank you, Mark, for like clicking through it. Like, are you guys already having some of those partners that were talked about using those tools, and are they able to actually say report back like this is really working or this is what's missing, and what other needs do they have for filling in that tool?
Mark, do you want to start?
Yeah, so we have currently linked to the hub. We kind of at a county-wide scale have the data coming across. So not to get too much in the details, but when you add your data to the Rights of Way as Habitat database system, you're sharing with the public at a county level. And those organizations have the ability, if they want to share much more detail about where the specific habitat locations are. And then by sort of checking off the box to do that, then we can share the specifics. So we're continuing to work right now with the Rights of Way groups within the CW region to kind of go in that direction, but we haven't realized that potential quite yet.
Yeah, And I would just add, I think we have 26 or 28 energy and transportation organizations across the US that are registered to use the Rights of Ways Habitat Geospatial Database and upload data on where and how they're managing habitat on energy and transportation lands. Of course, not all of those are in the Chicago region, but we do have several, including some of the folks that are on the call today that have contributed data or in the process of compiling that data to contribute to the database. And again, that will feed automatically into the Chicago Wilderness Hub, as Mark described.
Thanks. There's some good comments in the chat and some questions, but I also see a couple hands. Let's go to Bob first and then Jim.
This is Bob Fisher from the Bird Conservation Network. One thing that strikes me about the green rights of way concept is that given that bird collisions with windows, et cetera, are a very, very large cause of both resident and migratory birds, that the right of way concept needs to take into account the issue of creating green rights of way and the buildings that adjoin those essentially should be viewed as opportunities, if not necessary, to make them bird friendly, to minimize the chance of bird collisions. Because I think if you build it, the birds will use it for various reasons. So the collision issue becomes more important in that particular application area.
Really excellent point. And almost all of these points come with attached, boy, if we had a data layer that goes with that, that would be great. So definitely thinking about a data layer of buildings. Jim?
Yeah, I was just going to ask Iris and Tega, is there an example of someone else doing this across the country, trying to use these corridors? And have they, is there a good example that we can look into and see how they're doing it?
Yeah, I would say there are several examples that have happened that we're aware of, at least looking at across the US and into Canada. Really a mix of different types of corridors. There's a project outside of Toronto that is using a hydroelectric corridor as a big kind of central convening point for all sorts of stakeholders to come together on conservation. It's part of a public green space effort as well. And there's been a lot of work that's been done in that region to look at electric corridors and roadsides and so forth. And the Canadian Wildlife Federation has been involved in a lot of those conversations. So that's one kind of regional effort that comes to mind. I know there are others across the states, as well as work that we've been doing at the university, just generally with energy and transportation lands, working to find ways to protect pollinator habitat and monarch habitat in particular. And through another program that we have, we've been working with over 35 state departments of transportation and utilities to protect monarch and pollinator habitat on their lands at pretty massive scale, upwards of 700,000 acres of habitat across the US on rights of way. So there are definitely a number of similar initiatives, and our hope through this project in the Chicago region is that this can become a more comprehensive case study that other municipal areas, metro and other can look at to see how rights of way kind of weave into these conservation strategies.
Great, thank you.
So we've got time for another point or question or two. I'm just kind of running through the chat here to make sure we've got some of these captured. Mark, do you want to maybe say a quick word about the integration of some of the, so looking at Ted's point here, additional information layers that might reveal hotspots for wildlife. In other words, how maybe some things like eBird, iNaturalist, and things like that might interact with the hub and be a resource for prioritization.
Yeah, great question. And it's funny, Bob and I are in the background sort of chatting about that. He's helped out already by providing some direct data connections to some of those eBird resources. And what we've done is we do actually, with my programmer, Don Morrison, who helps me kind of on the back end, he's actually already pulling all of the eBird data and figuring out, like, filtering it out to those that are the critical bird species. And our next step is to take those and create hotspots so that it's not single observations, but multiple observations will then indicate areas that are higher quality habitat that's been managed. So we do have plans to do more of that. We just need to, I need to turn my attention to it. It's kind of been a shotgun approach of checking off the boxes of getting all kinds of stuff done. But that is definitely one of the things we're going to do more of, is get more of those indicators in.
And Mark, maybe you can speak to this question from Debbie about how, and this is sort of returns to the question of data uploads and things. How quickly can the data be uploaded? Are partners ready to use the hub? Has us thinking about how the overall public engagement strategy is going with the hub.
Yeah, so the process, so uploading data to the hub directly, that's pretty straightforward for GIS people, right? If you have a shape file that you want to upload, you fill out the metadata as I was showing in the demo. That's pretty straightforward. Getting data into the rights of way as habitat database is a bit more involved, because we are hoping to kind of pull over lots of information with it, and it needs to also be kind of in a secure environment for some of the rights of way organizations. But that being said, it's not too crazy. We have videos on it. There's plenty. I mean, Iris can speak to that, but there's plenty of documentation, lots of good resources there. And we will certainly work with you to help get the job done if you're struggling.
And in terms of helping folks become aware and ready to use this, you know, I think in general, we're all looking towards a moment in the life of Chicago Wilderness, which is the Congress that's happening on November 4th this year. A great opportunity to share not just the maps, but the stories behind them about what steps people have taken, the victories they've achieved, challenges they face in different aspects of conservation in the region. Now, you know, the opportunity to do some story maps starts to appear. I know that there was some good photography being done last week on the agriculture tour. There are different ways, November 3rd, sorry about that, different ways to get the word out and about how maps can tell the story of challenge and success in the Chicago Wilderness region. And there are some other next steps too. So one of them is to invite folks who would like to be part of the mapping conversation. Please join us. It's generally every other Monday. The next meeting is July 18th. We decided to take July 4th off this year. But some folks in that group all the folks in that group have been doing some amazing thing, including Casey Sullivan, some wonderful story maps, Jim Anderson connecting us to a bunch of people. Dave Holman made the maps that you saw about 30 by 30 in today's presentation. So there's that. And then Iris Ortega, do you want to say a word about the series, about the specifics, about prioritization on this rights of way topic?
Sure. So our next cafe series will be in 3 weeks, so keep an eye out for that. July 20th at 12:30 Central Time. And the goal of this next session is to bring together the GIS specialists and the land managers to start framing what a good prioritization strategy would look like. And I think a link will be provided in the chat. Let's see. Yes, perfect, thank you. And so if you're interested in being a part of the conversation or know any organizations that would be, please invite them and don't forget to register to get that link to access the meeting.
That's great. And I would also note that all the other goal teams are moving as well. And on July, well, Ted, do you want to say a quick word about the climate meeting cafe?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. So we are going to have a climate cafe later, not later this month, tomorrow, later this month. In July, I think the date is the 27th at noon. And we will be looking at mitigation and mitigation strategies, which is part of the climate goal. If you go to the CW community calendar page, there are also lots of other cafes as well as regular meetings listed for each of the goal groups if you want to attend those. I know several goal groups, especially climate, are looking for young professionals to help out with strategy informing these work streams and coordination items in and among the goal groups. So if you are interested, please do reach out to us. We do need all hands on deck for climate crisis and getting this work done. Thank you.
All right, so this is wonderful. Open invitation to join any one of these initiatives of Chicago Wilderness, including the mapping group. I just saw that note in the chat too. Love to see that, Refugio. We will be staying in touch, and we hope what we've done today is to demonstrate that this vision has actions attached to it and pathways that are being worked out to get towards conservation action, and that the hub is a support for all of it. So with that, I'll thank you for your time today, and hope to see you all soon somewhere out there in Chicago Wilderness.